dealing with like what the Trumps have said, they kind of said, hey, we're going to declare war potentially on the cartels. I mean, they kind of said that in not so many words. And this,
Yeah.
ever since that got brought up, it's been talked about on a lot of other podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. And I actually had Julian and Elise pull up. I said, pull up the definition of terrorism on your screen right there.
Yeah.
Let's really look at the definition. Using violence, right, to coerce for political gain, non-combatants for either political or, ideological gain. Well, when I look at what the Chinese and the Mexican groups have done, say in Northern California, where they've literally changed the direction of a community, they've gotten involved in voting in elections, residents have left, they've changed the demographic, and then let's not forget that economic, goals kind of go hand in hand sometimes with political goals, however you read between the lines. And I've
Yeah.
always said I consider this an ecological terrorism war when you talk about the wildlife issues, but I think we have a domestic terrorism event going on with the damage they're inflicting on Americans, either indirectly or directly. Now, does that mean we just unleash the military? Not necessarily, but we have to do something. And I know, brother, you and I talked a little bit about this the first time, something that's a little more targeted and a little more hands off and a little more people involved on the enforcement side and not just enforcement. We don't just do this by waving a stick. You and I
Yeah.
both know we got to educate. We got to bring our
Yes.
kids into this. We got to educate them on human trafficking, target indicators, fentanyl, what these pills can do, what this weed does. Like when I show high school assemblies, all these gory pictures of the weed and farms and the cartel stuff, and kids go, "Whoa, I use weed, Lieutenant, but I don't know if I don't get something from someone, I may not even smoke another joint." I'm like, I'm not saying big brother. That's not my job, guys. Kids, I just want you to know what's out there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see you hurt, but more importantly, don't be complicit to this criminal group doing this in America. But that's a really, really interesting thing when you look at how we define this cartel threat and can we make what I call the hidden war a little less hidden and make it a domestic priority. I
Yeah.
think you and I dabbled a little bit in our first conversation. Put this in the top three, man. Proxy wars like the stuff going on in Ukraine and all this other stuff we're doing and putting billions of dollars. We could take, we don't, give me a quarter of that money. Just give me 25% of those multi billions that have gone over to Ukraine for this proxy war and put it into enforcement, multi-agency activities, federal, state, local, maybe military where it's appropriate, whether it's like counter drug that's here for the right domestic reasons, helping us out, education, rehabilitation, all of those things. And I think we'd really make a dent. And I think we're on that path that if it's ever going to happen, I think it might happen now.
Yeah.
And I do have to tell a quick story. In 2016, when it comes to the Trumps, I was at SHOT Show, our tactical trade show that you and I are very familiar with, and most of our listeners and viewers are. And I
Many,
was
many
there doing
years,
this.
many, many years.
Yeah. Well, it was 2016. Our team was 2 years old. And what was I doing there? I was doing outreach, but I was looking for equipment, and getting my team sorted out on the Met front. And I was invited with some special ops guys by the owner of an outdoor apparel company, Kuyu, Jason Hairston, who's very tight with Don Jr. because Don Jr. is a big hunter. They mountain hunt together. I'm a Kuyu guy. We were using their stuff. We were developing tactical lines of stuff with that organization, along with the SEAL teams. And there are about 60 of us in the outdoor tactical industry or in operations domestic or law enforcement military that were invited to meet with the Trumps in SHOT Show, 60 of us, one evening. And it was right when Don Sr. was about to hit the campaign trail, head to the caucuses, late January. And my first book, War in the Woods, Jason had a copy of, and it blew him away when we started working with Kuyu. But he said, get a copy of the book. I want to bring you this thing. I want you to introduce you to the Trumps. You got to tell them this story. I said, well, how do they not know this story? I mean, you hunt with Don Jr. He goes, they don't know this story. They need to know it. And when I met Don Jr. and Sr. with the book, and Jason introduced us, and I told him who I was, and we had a little function. There were a bunch of other things going on. And I remember Don Jr. looking at Jason, looking at me, and he just looks up and he goes, John's a game warden enforcing wildlife crimes in California and the Silicon Valley, and they're dealing with Mexican cartels and poisons and AK-47 gunfights. And he just said, how the F do me and my dad not know this? And he said, that's exactly why we're
Yeah.
having this conversation, Don. And I got 5, 10 minutes with the man. We did our photos. And I said, okay, let's see what happens. One, he wasn't going to win the election.
Yeah.
So, but he won the election, And I remember we were doing night sniper training by design the night of the election because I didn't want to be around for a bad result. And so all of our guys went out and did a night op for quals. And I got back at 11 that night. My family's like, guess what? Guess who's winning the election? Couldn't believe it. Within a month of that, brother, I kid you not, remember Jeff Sessions was the AG, the first AG in the Trump administration, right when he got elected. And all of a sudden, we go on complete lockdown in California, sanctuary state, don't talk to ICE or work with Border Patrol. What? We can't talk to these guys? We're federally deputized. They're federal agents by policy. We're going to share with our Border Patrol and our ICE brothers, and you're telling us not to. So we're getting this complete denial of shutting down any type of interaction or even talking about cartels in California. But now all of a sudden, Forest Service that was in the previous beatdown, now they're funded with multi-million dollars, Operation Forest Watch, right from Trump and Sessions. And no longer will a marijuana case, U.S. attorneys look at it and go, it's only weed in the forest. I don't care. I'm going for white dope. All of a sudden, they looked at environmental crime. They put a ton of money into it. And now we were working with the feds and literally kicking ass and taking names and shutting down grows, reclamating them. So that was a breath of fresh air. I know how that administration is wired. That alone, I get, you get my vote for that. I don't like to get very political, Vince. I try to
Yeah.
stay out of it. I didn't endorse a candidate. I love the way you do it, brother. I let you put the information out there, be reasonable. We can all lean different ways depending on the issue. And I think we need to look at issues individually. I tend to stay
Yeah.
more middle of the road. But in this case, I don't think there's anything more urgent with all the other things that have come out in this election result than what we're talking about today. And again, thank you for getting into these issues because people can learn a lot from this and not necessarily for political reasons, but maybe to help identify that, yeah, I want this to be more of a priority than some of the other things I think our national money's going to.
Yeah. You know, there's just proven, I guess, record of what the Trump administration has done and what they plan to do. I'm very curious about their approach and their tact with this subject and how
Yes.
they're going to
Yeah.
handle it. I would love for them to do it in a way that uh, doesn't ruffle too many feathers, but in this conversation, it ruffles feathers no matter what because it's such a divisive topic because
It
of the
is.
lack of understanding of the topic, right? And so the lack of education of the topic. For some, you know how it is. For some reason, when you tell people like we want to, deport illegal immigrants, like all of a sudden their views on that turn into deporting immigrants, and like, no, no,
Right.
no, I don't think you heard us, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious to see how it all goes. I really want to, I'm more in a position of kind of standing in the crowd, watching and hoping it's for the best of the American people. But the conversation with the cartel is a very fascinating one, knowing our backgrounds and
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
what do we plan on doing as a country? Are we really going to designate them as terrorists? And if we are, then does that open up the U.S. military to engage? And will we be doing that in a way where we partner up with Mexican officials, which becomes very scary because who is corrupted and who is not in that
Yes.
world? So the
Absolutely.
whole thing, I think, it is very layered, more so, I believe, than the Al Qaeda or going after ISIS back in the day with military. This is almost like getting into an argument with your neighbor and hoping it works out.
You
And
know that I
hope.
like that analogy, man. That's spot on. It's too close. It's too much of a neighbor. And you said it really well when you said automatically that hot button. You get under the skin of, oh, now you're going to deport, immigrants, and what about non-cartel? And again, I always come back to what we are not trying to do is stop legitimate immigration. In fact, if
Yeah,
anything, one thing I do like that the administration said they want to streamline the process and give everybody that wants to chase this American dream that should be here, hey man, flood it.
yeah,
Just bring good, safe people in. I mean, you and we're part of a melting pot, and I think we're so blessed to be that. I'm not
yes,
originally from here either, man. I'm European and all over the place, um, but yeah, that's a very, very, very provocative question and has to be handled very delicately.
yeah,
Because I think defined or not as a terrorist, going into Mexico and sending special operations guys in there, yeah, that could be it could be another bad episode of Sicario, right? Sicario 5 or
yeah.
whatever. It could be really, really bad if it's not structured properly.